A constant challenge we cannot escape. Dilexi Te Chapter 5 explained. The chapter that asks a dangerous question. What if the greatest danger to Christianity today is not persecution? Not atheism? Not even moral decline? But indifference to the poor? Chapter 5 of Dilexi Te is not comfortable reading. It does not simply teach charity. It challenges our conscience. It asks a question every Christian must answer. Are we truly living the gospel, or just talking about it? The church has always been measured by one thing. This chapter begins with a powerful reminder. The church has always been recognized not by her buildings, not by her influence, not by her numbers, but by her love for the poor. This is not optional Christianity. This is authentic Christianity. The exhortation reminds us. Love for the poor is not a social program. It is not activism. It is not politics. It is a sign that we have understood Christ. Because Christianity begins the moment we recognize Christ hides in the suffering. Not symbolically, but spiritually real. The poor are not just people we help. They are people through whom God examines our hearts. The scandal we rarely admit. One of the strongest points in this chapter is this. The poor are not a problem to solve. They are family to love. This changes everything. Because we can solve problems at a distance. But family requires closeness. You cannot love the poor from theory. You cannot love the poor from debates. You cannot love the poor from social media arguments. Love requires time, presence, attention, listening. And this is exactly what modern culture tries to avoid. Because the real poverty crisis today is not lack of resources. It is lack of attention. People are too busy, too distracted, too comfortable, too protected inside their own world. And slowly something dangerous happens. We stop seeing the poor. Not because they disappear, but because our hearts become blind. The Good Samaritan question that exposes us. This chapter brings back the parable of the Good Samaritan. But instead of asking what the Samaritan did, it asks something more uncomfortable. Which character are you? Are we the priest who passed by? The Levite who avoided involvement? Or the Samaritan who stopped? Because the difference between them was not religion. They were all believers. The difference was compassion in action. The real tragedy today is not that evil exists. It is that goodness often remains passive. We scroll past suffering. We walk past loneliness. We ignore silent pain. And we justify it by saying, I am busy. But the gospel never says, love when convenient. It says, go and do likewise. Meaning, love must interrupt us. Love must cost us something. Love must inconvenience us. Otherwise it is only an idea. The hidden danger of a comfortable Christianity. This chapter warns about something very subtle. A Christianity that talks about spirituality, but avoids real suffering. A Christianity of meetings without mission, prayers without compassion, talk without action. This is what Pope Francis often calls spiritual worldliness. It is when faith becomes comfortable, safe, predictable. But real Christianity has never been comfortable. It is incarnational, meaning it enters pain. It touches wounds. It walks into broken situations. Because Jesus did not save humanity from a distance. He entered human poverty. And if we want to follow him, we cannot remain distant either. The poor are not only those who need us. One of the most beautiful insights of this chapter is this. The poor do not only need us. We need them. Because they teach what success cannot teach. They remind us. Life is fragile. Security is temporary. Control is an illusion. They reveal how dependent we all are on God. In a strange way, the poor protect us from pride. They remind us, everything we have is gift. Everything we are is grace. And without humility, faith slowly dies. The poverty we rarely talk about. This chapter makes a surprising claim. The worst suffering of the poor is not always material. It is often spiritual neglect. Being ignored. Feeling invisible. Being treated as irrelevant. Sometimes people receive food, but no dignity. Sometimes they receive help, but no love. Sometimes they receive solutions, but no presence. And this is why the church insists. The poor do not only need bread. They need hope. They need prayer. They need someone to remind them. You are not forgotten by God. Why almsgiving still matters. Today many people criticize almsgiving. They say, it does not solve poverty. And the document agrees. Work is the real long-term solution. Justice matters. Structures must change. But here is the deeper truth. Almsgiving is not just about solving poverty. It is about preventing our hearts from becoming cold. Almsgiving forces us to stop. To look. To notice. To share. It is less about the money and more about the encounter. Because when we give with love, something changes inside us. Charity is not only transformation of society, it is transformation of the giver. The warning every Christian needs to hear. One of the most powerful warnings in this chapter is this. If we only talk about love, but rarely practice it, eventually even our beliefs become weak. Faith that is not lived slowly becomes theory. Hope that is not practiced slowly becomes fantasy. Love that is not expressed slowly disappears. This is why the exhortation says, doing something small is always better than doing nothing. Because charity keeps faith alive. The church the world needs today. The chapter ends with a vision. Not of a powerful church. Not of an influential church. But of a church with unlimited love. A church that sees no enemies. Only people to love. A church that builds bridges. A church that heals divisions. A church that reaches the forgotten. Because the world today does not need more arguments. It needs more witnesses. People who prove love is still possible. Mercy is still real. Goodness is still stronger than indifference. The real question this chapter leaves us with. At the end, this chapter leaves us with a personal question. Not, what should the church do? But, what will I do? Because Christianity is not lived in theory. It is lived in encounters. Maybe Christ will not come to us in visions. Maybe he will not appear in miracles. Maybe he will come the way he always has. Disguised as someone in need. And when that moment comes, the only question will be, did we recognize him? Reflection challenge. Today ask yourself, who is the Lazarus at my door? Who is the person I keep postponing loving? Where is God asking me to stop instead of pass by? Because one day we may discover the poor we ignored were the invitations to holiness we missed.